In America, they say marriage is a contract, but few read the fine print until it is too late. When my husband threw divorce papers on my ICU bed, he thought he was discarding damaged goods. He forgot that I built our empire from nothing. That signature he forced was not surrender. It was the key to a trap I buried on our wedding day. He wanted freedom, so I gave him the freedom to lose everything. My name is Julia Westfall. And the first thing I realized when I opened my eyes was that the color white could be violent. The ceiling of the intensive care unit at St. Jude Medical Center was not a peaceful cloud white. It was a harsh, industrial white, the kind that reflects light with an aggressive glare designed to expose every flaw and every wound. The air tasted of rubbing alcohol and something metallic, like the taste of a penny left on the tongue for too long. My body felt heavy, not with sleep, but with the terrifying weight of immobilization. A rhythmic beeping sound drilled into my right ear. Beep, beep, beep. It was the only proof that time was still moving forward, even if my life had come to a violent halt on the federal highway just hours ago. I am 34 years old. I am the creative director of Vanguard Horizon, one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the country. I have designed skyscrapers that pierce the clouds of Chicago and museums that float on the water in Seattle. I understand structure. I understand foundations. But as I lay there, trapped in a body that refused to obey my commands, I realized that the foundation of my own life was about to be demolished. The doctor had been in earlier. He spoke in low, serious tones about polytrauma, about crushed vertebrae, and about my right leg. He used words like nerve damage and potential permanent paralysis. He told me that walking again would require a miracle or years of agony. My mind, however, was crystal clear. It was a cruel irony. My brain was firing on all cylinders, analyzing the structural integrity of the room, counting the ceiling tiles, and processing the pain with the cold logic of an engineer. While my legs lay dead beneath the sheets, then the door opened. It was not a nurse. It was not a doctor coming to offer a prognosis. It was Marcus Sterling. My husband walked into the ICU as if he were stepping into a boardroom meeting that he was already late for. He was 36 years old, wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that I had picked out for him in Milan. He looked impeccable. There was not a hair out of place, not a wrinkle on his shirt. He did not bring flowers. He did not bring a change of clothes for me. He did not even bring a look of concern. In his hand, he held a large, yellow manila envelope. He approached the bed, but he kept a safe distance, as if my condition were contagious. He looked at the monitors, then at the cast on my leg, and finally, briefly, at my face. His expression was not one of relief that his wife was alive. It was a look of unmasked disgust, mixed with a frantic impatience. I had seen that look before, usually when a waiter brought him the wrong wine, but never directed at me. "You are awake," Marcus said. His voice was flat. "I am," I rasped. My throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. "Water." He ignored the request. He did not reach for the plastic cup on the bedside table. Instead, he tossed the yellow envelope onto the bed, right over my injured legs. The light impact sent a shockwave of pain shooting up my spine, but I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. "We do not have time for pleasantries, Julia," he said, checking his watch. It was a Patek Philippe, a gift I had bought him for our 5th anniversary. It cost $45,000. I spoke to the doctors. "They say you might never walk again. They say you are looking at months, maybe years, of rehab." I looked at him, waiting for the "I am here for you" part. It never came. "The IPO is in 3 weeks, Marcus continued, pacing the small space beside the bed. "The investors are skittish. They want stability. They want a power couple that projects strength, vitality, and the future. They do not want a CEO pushing a cripple around in a wheelchair." The word hung in the air, colder than the air conditioning that was blasting directly onto my exposed skin. Cripple. "I need a perfect wife, Julia," he said, stopping to look at me with cold, dead eyes. I need someone who can stand next to me at the gala. I need someone who looks like success, not a tragedy. I do not need a burden in a wheelchair dragging down the stock price before we even launch. I stared at him. This was the man I had built. When I met Marcus, he was a mid-level manager with charm but no vision. I was the architect. I was the brain behind Vanguard Horizon. I made him the CEO because I preferred the drafting table to the boardroom, and because I loved him. I thought we were partners. I thought he was the face, and I was the heart. I realized in that second that he was just a mask, and there was nothing behind it but rot. "What is in the envelope, Marcus?" I asked. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a sudden surge of adrenaline. "Divorce papers," he said simply, "and a non-disclosure agreement." He reached into the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of documents. He flipped to the back page and uncapped a fountain pen. "Sign it," he ordered. "I want this done today. We will file it tomorrow. We will release a joint statement saying we separated amicably months ago due to creative differences. That way, when I debut the new brand ambassador next week, the press won't eat me alive." "The new brand ambassador," I repeated. "You mean your mistress?" He let out a short, humorless laugh. "She is not just a mistress, Julia. She is the future. She is 24. She is fresh. She is everything you are not right now. She is the new face of Vanguard Horizon." He leaned in close, his expensive cologne mixing with the smell of disinfectant, creating a nauseating blend. "If you do not sign," he whispered, his voice dropping to a menacing hiss, "I will cut off the medical funding. The company insurance policy, I can freeze it. The private accounts, I can tie them up in litigation for 10 years. You are in a private ICU room that costs $5,000 a night. If I cut you off, you will be on the street. Julia, you will rot in a state facility with bed sores and debt while I take the company public." He thought he had me. He thought the fear of poverty, the fear of pain, and the fear of abandonment would break me. He looked at me and saw a broken woman. He did not see the architect. I reached out with a trembling hand. The IV lines pulled at my skin. I took the documents. My eyes scanned the pages. He was rushing me, tapping his foot on the linoleum floor, but my mind was trained to look for details. I saw the standard divorce clauses. I saw the waiver of spousal support. But then, I saw something else. It was hidden. It was tucked cleverly beneath the signature page of the divorce decree, stapled in a way that made it look like an addendum. The header was standard font, something easily overlooked: Emergency Asset Management Transfer. It was a document that would grant him full, unilateral power of attorney over my personal trust and my intellectual property rights in the event of my incapacitation, by signing the divorce papers on top. I would be authenticating the signature block that applied to the bottom document as well. He was not just trying to leave me. He was trying to strip me of everything I owned, everything I had created, and every penny I had inherited from my grandmother. He wanted to steal Vanguard Horizon. I looked up at him. He was checking his reflection in the turned-off screen of the television mounted on the wall. He was adjusting his tie. He was already planning his victory speech. "Give me the pen," I said. He handed it to me. "Smart choice. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." I held the pen. My fingers were weak. My hand shook, not from fear, but from the sheer physical effort of holding the instrument. I placed the tip of the pen on the paper. I could have screamed. I could have thrown the papers in his face. I could have called the nurse, but I knew the law in this state. I knew the power of a signature, and I knew exactly what I needed to do to turn this moment from a defeat into a delayed execution. I began to sign. Usually, I sign my name as Julia Sterling. It is quick, elegant, and efficient. But today, I did not sign that name. I wrote Julia. Then, I paused. The pain in my back was throbbing, a white-hot rhythm that matched the monitor. I gritted my teeth. In the space between my first and last name, where there should have been nothing, I wrote Westfall, my maiden name, the name I was born with, the name on my original birth certificate, and the name that was the key to a very specific clause in our prenuptial agreement and the company bylaws. I signed Julia Westfall Sterling. And then, I did the most important thing. As I finished the loop of the last letter, I deliberately relaxed my grip. The heavy, expensive fountain pen slipped from my fingers. It hit the paper. The nib struck the page hard, right next to the signature line, leaving a large, jagged blot of black ink. It looked like a mistake. It looked like the clumsy error of a woman who was losing control of her motor functions. To Marcus, it looked like weakness. To a forensic document examiner, and more importantly, to the trustees of my blind trust. That blot combined with the inclusion of my maiden name was a distress signal. It was a code red. It meant I am signing this under duress. I am not safe. Activate the fail-safe. Oops, I whispered, letting my hand fall back onto the bedsheet as if I were exhausted. Marcus snatched the papers away before the ink was even dry. He glanced at the signature, saw the ink blot, and curled his lip in disdain. Messy, he muttered. Just like you. He did not notice the extra name. He was too focused on the fact that he had the signature. He was too blinded by his own greed to read the letters. He shoved the papers back into the yellow envelope and sealed it shut. Well, he said, straightening his jacket. That is that. I will have my lawyers file this in the morning. The house is mine. Obviously, you cannot manage the stairs. I will have your things sent to wherever you end up. He walked to the door. He did not say goodbye. He did not look back. He opened the door, letting in the noise of the hallway, the paging system, the squeak of cartwheels, the chatter of nurses. Pay your own hospital bills, ex-Mrs. Sterling. He threw over his shoulder, a cold smile playing on his lips. I am done paying for dead weight. The door swung shut. The room returned to silence. The white walls seemed to close in on me. The smell of disinfectant was stronger now, choking me. My leg felt like it was encased in concrete. I was alone. I was injured. I was soon to be divorced. And according to him, I was about to be destitute. But as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I did not cry. I did not feel the crushing weight of despair that he had hoped to inflict upon me. Instead, a strange, cold calm settled over my chest. It was the same calm I felt when I looked at a complex blueprint and saw the solution that no one else could see. He thought he had just signed a Declaration of Independence. He thought he had just secured his future in the company I built. He had no idea. By forcing me to sign that document with that specific variation of my name, and by ignoring the ink blot that stained the page, he had unknowingly triggered a sequence of events that he could not stop. He had just handed control of the hidden majority shares to a shadow board of directors. He had just authorized a forensic audit of his own spending. He thought he was walking out of a hospital room, leaving a broken wife behind. I listened to the steady beep, beep, beep of the monitor. It was not the sound of a life fading. It was the sound of a countdown. You just activated Article 13. Marcus, I whispered to the empty room. The pain in my leg was excruciating, but the fire in my mind was hotter. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me. Not to sleep, but to plan. He wanted a war. He wanted to treat marriage like a contract. Fine. I would show him what happens when you breach the contract with the architect who designed the entire building. He was about to find out that the foundation he stood on was actually a trapdoor, and I had just unlocked the latch. The morning sun did not bring warmth. It brought an invoice. I had barely managed to sleep for 2 hours, drifting in and out of a chemically induced haze. When the door to my room pushed open, it was not Marcus returning to apologize. It was a woman from the hospital administration department. She held a wireless payment terminal in her hand and wore a look of practiced apology that told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke a word. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice tight. "We attempted to process the deposit for your upcoming orthopedic surgery, the one scheduled for this afternoon to stabilize your femur. The transaction was declined." I stared at her. The pain in my leg was a dull, throbbing roar that made it hard to focus, but the humiliation cut through the fog like a scalpel. Declined, I repeated. That is impossible. The limit on that card is $100,000. The card has been reported lost or stolen as of 6 this morning, she explained, looking down at her clipboard. And the secondary card on file has been frozen by the primary account holder. Marcus, he had not waited a day. He had not even waited for the ink to dry. He had woken up, poured himself a coffee, and erased my financial existence before breakfast. I see, I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly so. What are my options? The administrator shifted her weight uncomfortably. Your insurance status has also been updated in our system. You are no longer listed under the Platinum PPO plan. You have been downgraded to the basic state minimum coverage dependent plan. This policy does not cover a private ICU suite, nor does it cover the specific titanium reconstruction hardware your surgeon requested. So, I am being evicted, I said. We have to move you to a semi-private room in the general trauma ward, she said, and we will need to seek an alternative, covered surgical option. It might delay the procedure by 48 hours. 2 hours later, I was no longer in the white silence of the private suite. I was wheeled down a hallway that smelled of floor wax and cafeteria food. Into a room that I had to share with 3 other people. There was no privacy. A thin beige curtain was the only thing separating me from a man who was coughing violently and a woman who was crying into her phone. The television mounted on the ceiling was blaring a game show. The air was thick and humid. This was what Marcus wanted. He wanted me to feel small. He wanted me to feel the tangible, physical drop in my status. He wanted to remind me that without him, without the company resources he was currently hijacking, I was just another body in a bed, waiting for approval. A nurse, a kind woman named Maria, who looked far too tired for her shift, handed me my phone. Marcus had left it on the bedside table in the ICU, probably forgetting to take it, or perhaps leaving it on purpose so I could witness the destruction of my world in real time. You have a lot of notifications, honey, Maria said gently as she adjusted my pillows. I turned the phone on. The screen exploded with messages. They were not from friends asking how I was. They were from my team, my architects, the people I had hired, trained, and mentored. Julia, security is escorting us out. What is happening? He just fired Sarah. He said the design department is being restructured. They are scrubbing your name from the website. Marcus just brought in a new team. They look like corporate raiders, not architects. I listened to a voicemail from David, my lead structural engineer. His voice was shaking. Julia, he is canceling the eco-complex project in Portland. He says it is not profitable enough. That was your dream project. He is selling the land to a strip mall developer. You have to stop him. I lowered the phone. A wave of nausea rolled over me, stronger than the pain from my crushed leg. The Portland project was not just a building. It was 5 years of research into sustainable housing. It was my legacy, and Marcus was selling it for quick cash. I closed my eyes, and the sounds of the general ward faded away, replaced by the memory of a rainy night 5 years ago. It was 3 a.m. I was in our old studio apartment, the one with the leaky faucet and the drafty windows. I was hunched over a drafting table, my eyes burning from exhaustion, my fingers stained with graphite. We had a deadline for the Vanguard pitch the next morning, if we missed it. We were bankrupt. The door had swung open, and Marcus had stumbled in, smelling of expensive scotch and cigars. He had been out networking, he called it. You worry too much. Jules, he had slurred, loosening his tie and collapsing onto the sofa. I charmed them. They love me. The deal is in the bag. The deal requires blueprints. Marcus, I had snapped, not looking up. It requires structural calculations. It requires actual work, not just charm. That is what you are for, he had laughed, throwing a pillow at me. You are the brains. I am the face. We are a team. You build it. I sell it. Why are you so uptight? I had looked at him then, passed out on the couch 5 minutes later, snoring while I worked until sunrise. I had felt a twinge of resentment, a small voice warning me that the division of labor was dangerously uneven, but I had ignored it. I told myself that he relieved my stress, that his charisma opened doors, my shyness kept closed. I told myself that marriage was about covering for each other's weaknesses. I was a fool. I had not been covering for his weakness. I had been financing his laziness. And now, he was using the very success I had built with my sleepless nights to destroy me. Mrs. Sterling. The voice brought me back to the crowded room. I opened my eyes. Standing at the foot of my bed was Elena Rossi. Elena was 60 years old, but she had the posture of a ballerina and the eyes of a sniper. She was my godmother, but more importantly, she was the fiercest corporate litigator in the city. She was wearing a blood-red blazer that seemed to scream danger. She looked out of place in the drab hospital ward, like a diamond in a gutter. "Elena," I breathed, feeling the first prickle of tears I had allowed myself since waking up. She did not hug me. Elena did not believe in hugging during a crisis. She believed in strategy. She pulled the plastic visitor chair close to my bed, wiped the seat with a disinfectant wipe from her purse, and sat down. "I saw the downgrade," she said, gesturing to the room. "Tacky, very tacky, even for him." He cut the cards. "Elena." He froze the accounts. "I know," she said. "I tried to access the joint operating fund this morning to get you transferred to a private clinic. Locked. He has petitioned the board for an emergency suspension of your voting rights." "On what grounds?" I asked. Elena took a deep breath. "He submitted a medical affidavit claiming that the accident caused severe cognitive impairment. He is telling the board you have frontal lobe damage. He says you are emotionally unstable, irrational, and incapable of making financial decisions. He is painting a picture of a woman who has lost her mind." I stared at the ceiling tiles. "He wants to invalidate me. If I am crazy, he becomes my conservator. He gets control of everything." "Exactly," Elena said. "And the worst part is, he has a signed divorce petition. He filed it at 9 this morning. He is moving to bifurcate the divorce, separate the status of the marriage from the division of assets. He wants to be single by next week so he can parade that child, Tiffany, around at the IPO launch while leaving the asset fight dragging on for years." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Julia, why did you sign it? You should have called me. You should have thrown it in his face by signing. You gave him the ammunition he needed to claim you agreed to his terms." I turned my head and looked at her. The pain was still there, sharp and biting, but my mind was sharpening against it. "I had to sign, Elena," I said softly. "He threatened to stop the doctors from operating on my leg. He threatened to leave me here to rot." "We could have fought that," Elena argued. "I could have got an emergency injunction." "There was no time," I said. "But listen to me closely. Did you see the signature?" Elena frowned. "I saw a copy. It looked messy. There was a big blot of ink." "It was not just messy," I said. "Look at the name." Elena paused, her mind racing. She was a brilliant lawyer. She knew every document I had ever drafted. "You signed Julia Westfall Sterling," she whispered. "Yes, but your legal name on all the Vanguard Incorporation documents, the name on the bank accounts, the name on the marriage license, is just Julia Sterling. You dropped Westfall legally 10 years ago." "Correct," I said. "And do you remember the blind trust we set up the week before the wedding, the one we created as a failsafe in case of a hostile takeover or kidnapping?" Elena's eyes widened. She gasped. "The Artemis Protocol. Clause 13 of the Artemis Trust," I recited from memory. "If the grantor signs any document transferring assets or dissolving partnerships using a non-current legal name, specifically the maiden name, accompanied by a visual distress indicator, an ink blot or tear, it is to be interpreted as a signature under duress." Elena sat back, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. It triggers the automatic asset protection freeze, she said. It does not stop the divorce, but it strips the authority from the signature regarding any financial concessions. More than that, I added, it activates the secondary board of trustees. It moves the majority voting shares into a holding company in Zurich that Marcus does not even know exists. He thinks he just took control of the company. In reality, by filing that document with that specific signature, he just handed proof of his own coercion to the international auditors. He has no idea, Elena whispered. He thinks you made a mistake because you were groggy. He thinks I am weak, I said. He thinks I am a cripple. So, what do we do? Elena asked, pulling out her notepad. Do we file the counter-motion now? Do we reveal the trust and lock him out of the building today? I looked down at my immobilized leg. I thought about the humiliating ride down the hallway. I thought of my team packing their boxes. I thought of the Portland project being sold for parts. Stopping him now would be justice, but it would be small justice. It would be a legal battle. It would be messy. No, I said firmly. Elena looked surprised. No? If we stop him now, he spins it. He says it is a misunderstanding. He settles. He walks away with half, I said. I do not want him to walk away with half. I want him to have nothing. Julia, he is draining the accounts. He is firing your people. Let him, I said. Let him fire them. It creates a paper trail of mismanagement. Let him spend the money. It creates a trail of embezzlement. The Artemis Trust tracks every penny he touches now, but it does not stop him. It lets him dig the hole. You want to bait him, Elena realized. I want him to feel safe, I said. I want him to think he has won completely. I want him to bring Tiffany into my house. I want him to stand on that stage at the IPO and think he is the king of the world. Because the higher he climbs, Elena, the more it is going to hurt when I pull the ladder out. It is risky, Elena warned. You will have to stay here. In this ward, you will have to endure the humiliation. You will have to watch him destroy your reputation in the press. I can handle the pain, I said, looking at the curtain that separated me from the coughing man. Pain is just information. It tells you what is broken. And right now, Marcus is breaking everything, but he forgets one thing. What is that? I designed the building, I said. I know where the load-bearing walls are, and I know exactly which brick to pull to bring the whole thing down on his head. Okay, Elena said, closing her notepad with a snap. We play dead. We let the vulture eat. But I need you to do one thing for me, I said. Name it. Get me a tablet with a secure connection, I said. And contact the physical therapist, the aggressive one, the one who makes people cry. Why? Because, I said, my voice hardening into steel. I am going to walk again, and when I walk into that courtroom to reveal the truth, I am not going to be limping. Elena stood up and smoothed her red blazer. She looked at me with a mixture of pride and sorrow. He made a mistake throwing those papers at you, she said. No, I replied. His mistake was thinking I would just sign them. His mistake was thinking that Julia Sterling was all I was. He forgot about Julia Westfall. Elena turned to leave. I will get the tablet, and Julia welcome back to the fight. When she left, the room felt different. The smell of the cafeteria food was still there. The coughing was still there, but the feeling of helplessness was gone. I lay back on the thin, lumpy pillow. I closed my eyes and visualized the ink blot on the paper. It was not a stain, it was a seed. And I was going to water it with every insult, every dollar he stole, and every lie he told, until it grew into a jungle that would swallow him whole. The screen of the tablet was a window into a hell I had paid for. Kevin, my head of IT security at Vanguard Horizon, was a man of few words and absolute loyalty. When Marcus fired him 2 hours after my accident, Kevin did not just pack his box and leave. He activated a dormant backdoor in my home automation system, a ghost protocol that bypassed the main server and streamed the security feed directly to an encrypted cloud account. He had texted me the login credentials that morning with a simple note. Thought you might want to keep an eye on the castle. I lay in the cramped, noisy general ward bed, the curtains drawn tight around me to create a flimsy illusion of privacy. My headphones were on, sealing me into the digital feed. The image on the screen was high definition, crisp enough to see the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light of my living room. The front door opened. Marcus walked in. He looked energized, almost manic, shedding his jacket and tossing it onto the imported Italian leather armchair. But he was not alone. A woman followed him in. She was young, perhaps 24 years old. She had the kind of curated beauty that exists mostly on social media long extensions, perfect contouring, and an outfit that cost more than my first car, but looked like it was made of plastic. Tiffany. I recognized her from the photos Elena had shown me. But seeing her in my foyer, standing on the hand-woven rug I had brought back from Morocco, was a physical blow. "Oh, wow," Tiffany said. Her voice was tinny through the microphone. She spun around, taking in the vaulted ceilings and the floating staircase I had designed myself. "This place is insane, babe. It is like a museum." "It is all yours," Marcus said, walking over to the bar. "Make yourself at home." I watched, my breath catching in my throat, as she wandered through the ground floor. She touched everything. She ran her fingers with their long acrylic nails over the sculptures. She picked up a crystal vase, looked at it with bored curiosity, and set it back down dangerously close to the edge. Then, she started walking up the stairs. "Where are you going?" Marcus called out, pouring himself a drink. "I want to see the closet," she shouted back. "You said she had good bags." My stomach twisted. That closet was not just storage. It was a timeline of my career. It held the suit I wore to my first board meeting, the dress I wore when I won the Pritzker equivalent, and the vintage silk scarves I had collected for decades. I switched the camera view to the master bedroom. Tiffany pushed the double doors open. She walked into my sanctuary. She did not hesitate. She went straight to the vanity. I watched as she picked up my jars of face cream custom formulas that cost $500 an ounce and unscrewed the lids. She dipped her fingers in, slathering the cream onto her hands as if it were cheap lotion from a drugstore. She picked up my perfume, a rare scent from Grasse, and sprayed it into the air like room freshener. Then she opened the walk-in closet. I felt a surge of nausea so violent I had to close my eyes for a second. When I opened them, she was pulling things off the hangers. My clothes, my armor. She held up a black architectural blazer, frowned at it, and tossed it onto the floor. She grabbed a silk blouse, held it against her chest, looked in the mirror, and then dropped it on top of the blazer. "This stuff is so old," she yelled down the hall. "It is all grandma clothes." Marcus appeared in the doorway of the bedroom. He was holding a glass of wine, my wine. It was a bottle of 1996 vintage that I had been saving for our 10th anniversary. He was drinking it casually, without even letting it breathe. "She had no taste," Marcus said, leaning against the doorframe, watching her trample on my silk blouses. "She was boring, all work, no life. Get rid of it. I want your stuff in here by Friday." "Really?" Tiffany squealed. She grabbed a handful of hangers and yanked them down. "Can I toss it?" "Trash bags are in the kitchen," Marcus said. I watched as she ran out and came back with a roll of black garbage bags. She started stuffing my life into them. The sound of the plastic rustling was amplified by the microphone, scratching against my eardrums. She did not fold anything. She just balled up cashmere and silk and threw it into the trash. "What about her?" Tiffany asked, pausing for a moment as she tied off a bag. "Is she, coming back?" Marcus took a sip of the wine and laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "Julia," he said. "No, she is done. I spoke to the doctors. Even if she walks, she will be limping for the rest of her life. She is broken. Tiff, I need a queen, not a burden. This house is your kingdom now." A burden. The word echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull. My blood pressure monitor beside the bed let out a sharp, warning ping. My heart was hammering against my ribs, faster and harder with every beat. Besides, Marcus continued, walking over to the wall where a painting used to hang, it was a modernist piece, a splash of blue and gray that I had bought when I sold my first major project. The wall was bare. I am clearing out the old energy and liquidating some assets to fund the new venture. The crypto thing? Tiffany asked. The digital real estate platform. Marcus corrected her. It is the future. I sold that ugly blue painting this morning for $80,000. Quick cash. He sold it. He sold the Blue Echo. It was worth $300,000, and he panic sold it for $80,000 just to fund a scam. My vision started to blur. The anger was no longer an emotion. It was a physical toxic event. It rushed through my veins like boiling oil. The monitor began to beep rapidly. 160 over 100, 180 over 110. I gasped for air. My chest felt like it was being crushed by one of the steel beams I used to specify in my drawings. Mrs. Sterling. The nurse's voice was distant. I could still hear Marcus laughing on the tablet. I could hear the sound of another trash bag being ripped open. Code Blue, get the crash cart. The room swarmed with blue scrubs. Someone ripped the headphones off my ears. The tablet fell to the floor, face down, cutting off the image of my husband destroying my life. I tried to speak, to tell them I was not dying. I was just furious, but my body had betrayed me. The stress had spiked my blood pressure to a critical level, threatening to burst the delicate vessels healing from the accident. Darkness swarmed in. Not peaceful, but red and angry. When I woke up, the room was dim. It was night. The aggressive beeping was gone, replaced by the steady rhythm of a machine that was controlling my medication drip. Elena was sitting in the corner, her face illuminated by the blue light of her phone. She looked older than she had yesterday. Her usually perfect bun was fraying at the edges. You gave us a scare, she said softly, not looking up from her screen. I saw them, I rasped. My voice was a wreck. I saw them in the house. Elena sighed and put her phone down. She walked over to the bed. I know. The doorman called me. He said Marcus had a moving truck there this afternoon. They took 20 boxes of your personal effects to the dump. He sold the Blue Echo, I whispered. He is selling more than that, Elena said grimly. The rumor mill is spinning. Julia, I had lunch with a contact at the Architecture Guild. Marcus is telling everyone that the accident happened because you were under the influence. He is saying you have been abusing prescription painkillers for years and that your instability is why the company has been stagnant. Stagnant. I tried to sit up, but the lines held me down. We had record profits last quarter. Facts do not matter when you control the microphone, Elena said. He is painting you as a liability. He needs to justify why he is taking sole control. If you are an addict, he is the hero saving the company. I closed my eyes. The rage was still there, but it had changed. Before, it was hot and explosive. Now, it had cooled into something hard and sharp, like obsidian. Dr. Alastair wants to put you on heavy sedatives, Elena said, to keep your blood pressure down. He says you need to sleep for a week. No, I said. Julia, you almost stroked out. No sedatives, I repeated clearly. I need my mind. If I sleep, he wins. If I'm groggy, I cannot fight. I looked at my leg. It was still encased in the heavy cast, useless and heavy. I want the physical therapist, I said. The one you mentioned, the mean one. It is 3 a.m, Elena said. Then get her here at 6, I said. I am starting tomorrow, 2 sessions a day. No, 3. Julia, the pain. The pain is fuel, I cut her off. Every time it hurts, I will remember Tiffany wearing my clothes. Every time my muscles scream, I will remember him calling me a cripple. I am going to walk, Elena, and I'm going to walk right over him. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart rate to slow down by sheer will. But first, I said, we need to make him confident. We need to feed his ego until it is so big he cannot see his own feet. How? Hand me the tablet, I said. Elena retrieved it from the floor. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb fracture running across the glass. It was fitting. Write this down, I said. Send it from my personal email. Make the subject line, please. Elena opened the email app, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Go on, she said. I dictated the words slowly, forcing my voice to sound weak and pathetic, channeling the broken woman Marcus thought I was. Marcus, I know it is over. I know you have moved on. I am not going to fight you for the house or the shares. I just want one thing. Please, let me have the 1967 Mercedes wagon. My father bought it. It is not worth anything to you. It is rusted and the engine barely starts. I just need something familiar. I need to know I have a way to get to my rehab appointments when I get out. Please, just the car. You can keep everything else. Elena typed it out. She looked at me, raising an eyebrow. The 67 wagon. The one you spent $40,000 restoring last year, the one that is currently worth 6 figures to a collector. Marcus does not know cars, I said. To him, it is just old junk that takes up space in the garage. He thinks I am begging for scraps. Send it, I commanded. Elena hit send. We waited. The silence in the ward was broken only by the snoring of the man next to me. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then the tablet pinged. I looked at the notification. It was from Marcus. It was short, it was brutal, and it was exactly what I needed. Elena read it out loud, her voice trembling with suppressed fury. Sold it this afternoon to a scrap dealer for $500. It was an eyesore. Take the bus. Or better yet, call an Uber. Oh wait, you don't have a credit card. Good luck. I stared at the cracked screen. He had sold my father's car. He had probably given it away for nothing just to spite me. But I did not cry. Perfect, I said. Elena looked at me like I was crazy. Perfect, Julia. That was your father's car. Yes, I said. And the title for that car was in the name of the Westfall Family Trust. Not our joint assets, by selling it without my signature. He just committed felony theft and fraud across state lines because the buyer is likely out of state. I lay back on the pillow, the cold smile returning to my lips. He just stole from a trust fund that is federally regulated, I whispered. Add that to the list. Elena, and tell the physical therapist to bring the heavy weights tomorrow. I have a lot of anger to burn. The night dragged on, but I did not sleep. I watched the shadows move across the ceiling tiles, counting the hours until sunrise. He had taken my house. He had taken my clothes. He had taken my car. He had taken my reputation. But he had left me with the one thing he should have taken, my mind. And with that, I was going to dismantle him, brick by brick, until he was nothing but dust in the wind. Pain is not just a sensation. It is a location. For the next 7 days, I lived there. The hospital gym was located in the basement, a windowless room that smelled of rubber mats and stale sweat. It was a dungeon of self-improvement. My physical therapist was a woman named Sarge. That was not her real name, her badge said Brenda, but she had the biceps of a Marine and the mercy of a drill instructor. Again, she barked. I was gripping the parallel bars so hard my knuckles had turned the color of bone. Sweat was running down my back, soaking into the thin hospital gown. My right leg, now encased in a heavy walking boot rather than the plaster cast, felt like it belonged to a corpse. It was heavy, unresponsive, and shot through with bolts of electricity every time I tried to engage the quadriceps. I can't, I gasped, my arms shaking violently. Your husband says you can't, Sarge said, not looking up from her clipboard. He says you are an invalid. Is he right? That was the deal we had made. I told her everything. I told her about the papers, the mistress, the house. I gave her the ammunition she needed to torture me into recovery. I gritted my teeth. A guttural sound, half sob, half growl, tore from my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut and visualized Marcus's face. I visualized him laughing at the gala, I visualized Tiffany wearing my silk blouse. I pushed. My leg trembled, but it held. I dragged my weight forward. 1 inch, 2 inches. The pain was blinding. A white-hot spike driving into my hip, but I did not let go. "Good," Sarge said, her voice softening just a fraction. "That is 1 step. Now give me another." I spent 4 hours a day in that gym. When I wasn't screaming in physical agony, I was engaging in a different kind of torture forensic accounting. My new ally in this war was Dr. Allister. He was the head of neurosurgery, a man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much death to have patience for liars. He had come to see me on the 3rd day, holding a tablet. "Mrs. Sterling," he had said, closing the door to my shared room. "I received a request from your husband's legal team. They want me to sign an affidavit stating that your accident caused, and I quote, irreversible frontal lobe damage resulting in severe paranoia and cognitive decline." He looked at me over his reading glasses. "I have looked at your scans. Julia, you have a concussion. Yes. You have orthopedic trauma. Yes. But your brain, it is as sharp as a diamond. Why does he want me to say you are crazy?" "Because if I am crazy, he gets the power of attorney," I said. "He gets to sell my company." Dr. Allister had pursed his lips. He deleted the email in front of me. "I do not like bullies, Mrs. Sterling, and I definitely do not like men who use my profession to gaslight their wives. If you need a medical witness to prove you are sane, you have one," with Allister keeping Marcus's false narrative at bay within the hospital. Elena and I went to work. We turned my bedside table into a command center. While my roommates watched daytime soap operas, I was diving into the dark web of Marcus's finances. Elena had managed to get a mirror image of the company's server before Marcus changed the passwords. We were looking for the bleed, and we found it. It wasn't a bleed. It was a hemorrhage. "Look at this," I whispered, pointing at the screen of the laptop Elena had smuggled in. Date January 24th. Amount $250,000. Recipient Obsidian Holdings. "Shell company?" Elena asked, adjusting her glasses. "Worse," I said. "I ran the routing number. It goes to a bank in the Cayman Islands. He is not just spending the money, he is siphoning it. He is preparing to run. Or at least, preparing a nest egg that U.S. courts cannot touch." "He is moving fast," Elena noted. "He must be terrified the IPO will fail." "No," I corrected her. "He is terrified that I will wake up. He is trying to loot the ship before the captain comes back to the bridge." I kept scrolling. The sheer audacity of his spending was breathtaking. In the last week alone, he had charged $40,000 to the corporate card for client entertainment. I dug deeper into the itemized receipts. It was not client entertainment. There was a receipt for a $12,000 stay at the Four Seasons in Maui. The guest list: Mr. Marcus Sterling and Ms. Tiffany Banks. There was a charge for $5,000 at a high-end casino in Las Vegas, online gambling credits. And then, I saw it. The purchase that made the bile rise in my throat. The Diamond Vault. Item custom solitaire engagement ring. Cost $68,000. He had bought her a ring. He had bought his mistress an engagement ring using the joint account that I had funded with my inheritance from my grandmother. He was proposing to her with my grandmother's money, while I lay in a hospital bed, wondering if I would ever walk again. "He thinks you are dead," Elena said, her voice shaking with rage. "Legally and financially, he thinks you are already a ghost. He is about to find out in the worst way that I believe in hauntings," I said. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I was not just looking at the past. I was looking at the future. I accessed the project management files for Vanguard Horizon. Marcus had flagged the Solaris project for immediate liquidation. The Solaris project was my masterpiece. It was a design for a vertical botanical garden skyscraper that generated its own electricity. It was revolutionary. I had spent 3 years perfecting the wind turbine integration. The file showed a pending contract, buyer Apex Architecture. Price $2 million. $2 million? I hissed. The patent alone is worth $10 million. He is selling it for scrap to Gavin Thorne. Gavin Thorne was my rival. He was a hack who had been trying to copy my designs for a decade. Marcus was handing him my life's work on a silver platter for a quick payout. "We have to stop the sale," Elena said, reaching for her phone. "No," I stopped her. A cold, dangerous idea formed in my mind. "If we stop it, Marcus just finds another buyer. We let him sell it. Julia, that is your legacy. Pass me the phone," I said. I dialed a number I had not called in years. It rang twice. "Gavin Thorne speaking." "Hello, Gavin," I said. My voice was smooth, devoid of pain. "It is Julia." There was a long silence on the other end. "Julia," I heard. "I heard you were in bad shape. Marcus said you were confused." "Marcus says a lot of things," I said. "I hear you are buying the Solaris project." "It is a business deal, Julia," Gavin said defensively. "Fair and square." "I am not calling to stop you, Gavin," I said. "I am calling to give you a heads up. I want that project built. Marcus doesn't have the vision to finish it. You do." You do?" Gavin sounded suspicious. "Yes, but, Gavin, you know how lawyers are. If you buy it, make sure the contract has a specific indemnification clause. Make sure it states that the seller Marcus guarantees full, uncontested ownership of the intellectual property, and add a penalty clause. Say 3 times the purchase price if any third party claims copyright infringement within 5 years. Why would I do that? Because it protects you. I lied smoothly. If Marcus tries to screw you over later, you get paid, and it makes the board feel safer approving the deal. That actually makes sense, Gavin said. Thanks, Julia. Hope you feel better. I hung up. You just set a trap, Elena realized. The moment the sale goes through, the Artemis Trust will automatically flag the copyright violation because the IP belongs to me, not the company. The trust will sue Gavin. Gavin will trigger the penalty clause. And Marcus will personally owe Gavin Thorne $6 million that he does not have, I finished. He is signing his own death warrant. The next afternoon, the devil came to visit. I was alone in the room. I had just finished a grueling session with Sarge and my body was screaming. But when I heard his footsteps, I slumped into the pillows. I let my mouth hang slightly open. I let my hand twitch. Marcus stopped at the door. He was wearing a new suit, something flashy and checkered that I would never have let him buy. He looked at me with open contempt. I do not have all day. Julia, he said. He did not come in. He stood in the hallway, as if stepping over the threshold would taint him. He tossed another envelope onto the rolling table at the foot of the bed. The lawyers say the first signature was messy, he said. The bank is giving me grief about the transfer of the voting shares. They need a confirmation of intent. Sign this. It relinquishes your seat on the board effective immediately. I looked at the paper. It was the final nail in my coffin. If I signed this, I was officially out of Vanguard Horizon. I reached for the pen he held out. My hand trembled violently. I made sure of it. I let the pen hover over the paper, shaking like a leaf in a storm. God, you are pathetic, Marcus sneered. Just sign the damn thing. Look at you. You can't even hold a pen, and you think you can run a company? I looked up at him. I put all the sadness, all the fear, and all the confusion I could muster into my eyes. Marcus, I whispered. Why? Because I deserve it, he said, checking his reflection in the glass of the door. I put up with your long hours. I put up with your obsession with art. Now it is my turn. Just sign it so I can go. I have a dinner reservation. I signed. I made it jagged. I made it look like the scrawl of a child. Then, I let the pen drop. It clattered onto the floor and rolled under the bed. Oops, I mumbled. Marcus groaned. He stepped forward, snatched the paper, and checked the signature. It was legible enough. Good enough, he muttered. Goodbye, Julia. Don't wait up. He turned and walked away. I listened to his footsteps fading down the corridor. He was walking fast, eager to get to his dinner, eager to get to Tiffany, eager to celebrate his victory. I waited until the sound of the elevator dinger echoed down the hall. Then, I threw off the sheet. My legs were bare. The scars from the surgery were angry red lines running down my thigh. Stapled shut like a Frankenstein creation. The muscles were atrophied, thin and weak, but they were mine. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. "You are not a victim. You are the architect." I grabbed the metal rail of the bed. My knuckles turned white. I pushed. Pain exploded in my leg. It felt like the bone was shattering all over again. Black spots danced in my vision. A scream built in my throat. But I swallowed it down, turning it into a hiss of breath. I rose. I stood up. My legs shook violently. I was swaying like a tree in a hurricane. But I was standing. I was upright. I was looking at the world from my full height of 5'9", not from the vantage point of a cripple in a bed. 1 second. The pain was a fire. 2 seconds. I felt the sweat break out on my forehead. 3 seconds. I saw my reflection in the darkened window. I looked terrible. My hair was matted. My hospital gown was stained, but my eyes were burning. 4 seconds. 5. I held it. I forced the muscles to obey. I forced the nerves to reconnect. 10 seconds. I collapsed back onto the bed, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated power. I reached for the phone. My hand was steady now. I opened the message thread with Elena. I typed 3 sentences. He signed the deal with Gavin. He took the paper for the board. The fish has bitten. I hit send. Then I added 1 more line. And Elena. I just stood up. I lay back in the dark, listening to the hospital sounds. Marcus thought he had just buried me. He didn't realize he had buried a seed, and the dirt he kept piling on top of me. It was just fertilizer. I was growing, and when I broke the surface, I was going to be a forest that blocked out his sun. There is a specific kind of stench that permeates a charity gala held by the nouveau riche. It is not a bad smell. In fact, it smells expensive. It is a suffocating mixture of imported peonies, truffle oil, vintage champagne, and the desperate, acrid sweat of social climbers trying to prove they belong. Marcus was holding one of these carnivals in my living room. The invitation, which I had intercepted digitally, called it the Gala for Architectural Innovation. In reality, it was a debutante ball for his ego and a coming-out party for his mistress. He was using my house, my wine cellar, and my reputation to launch his new life. All while I was supposed to be weeping into a pillow at St. Jude Medical Center, but I was not at St. Jude. 3 days before my scheduled discharge, I walked out. It was not an official exit. I did not wait for the wheelchair escort. I signed the against medical advice forms with a steady hand. Ignoring the protests of the head nurse, Elena was waiting at the service entrance in her black sedan, the engine idling like a getaway car. "You look like death warmed over," Elena had said as I limped into the passenger seat, my face pale and my leg throbbing inside the walking boot. "And I plan to look like a nightmare by 8 o'clock tonight," I replied. We did not go to my house. That was occupied territory. We went to Elena's penthouse, a fortress of steel and glass on the 42nd floor overlooking the city. That afternoon was a blur of pain management and aesthetic reconstruction. I did not hire a makeup artist. I hired a restoration expert. She was a woman who usually worked on movie sets, covering up tattoos and bruises for action stars. She airbrushed the dark circles under my eyes until my skin looked like porcelain. She contoured my cheekbones until they looked sharp enough to cut glass. I squeezed my injured body into a structured white blazer that acted as armor, hiding the weight loss and the tremors. I wore wide-legged trousers that concealed the bulky medical boot on my right foot. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see a patient. I saw a CEO. I saw a predator. But before the war paint went on, I received the call that solidified my resolve. It was Beatrice Sterling, my mother-in-law. I was sitting on Elena's sofa, icing my leg. When my phone buzzed, I knew why she was calling. She wanted to ensure I was still safely tucked away in the hospital, far from her son's big night. "Hello, Beatrice," I answered, putting the call on speaker so Elena could hear. "Julia," her voice came through, crisp and cold, like biting into a frozen apple. "I assume you are resting. I heard about the downgrade in your room. Dreadful business." "It is charming, actually," I said dryly. "I am learning a lot about the respiratory habits of the general public." Beatrice did not laugh. She never laughed. She only made small, polite noises of amusement when socially required. "I am calling to give you some advice. Julia, mother to daughter. Although we both know we never really had that connection." "Go on," I said. "Stay down," she said. The pretense of politeness dropped away. "Marcus tells me you are being difficult. He tells me you are refusing to sign the final papers. Do not be that woman, Julia, the bitter ex-wife who clings to a man who has outgrown her. It is embarrassing." "Outgrown me?" I asked, gripping the phone. "I built him. Beatrice, I paid off your mortgage 3 years ago. Or did you forget that? Money is vulgar, Julia, and bringing it up is exactly why you never quite fit in." She snapped. "Marcus needs someone with grace, someone who understands the role of a wife. He needs a partner who can walk into a room and turn heads, not someone who, well, look at you. You are damaged goods. Let him go. Let him have a chance at happiness with someone suitable." Someone suitable. She meant Tiffany, an Instagram model who thought architecture was a filter on Snapchat. "Thank you for the advice, Beatrice," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I will keep it in mind tonight." "Tonight?" she asked sharply. "What happens tonight?" "Justice," I said, and hung up. Beatrice thought I was paralyzed by shame. She did not understand that shame burns off when you reach a certain temperature of rage. By 7:30 in the evening, Elena and I were parked in a sleek, unmarked black van on the street parallel to my driveway. We were not going inside, not physically. That would be messy. If I walked in on crutches, they would look at me with pity. I did not want pity. I wanted fear. And to create fear, you do not need to be present. You just need to be omnipresent. "Are we connected?" I asked. Elena handed me the tablet. "Kevin says the bridge is stable. You have full administrative control over the house systems, lighting, audio, visual, climate." I looked at the screen. The hidden cameras showed my living room packed with people. There were investors, city council members, and rival architects. Waiters were circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvres. And there was Marcus. He looked radiant. He was holding court near the fireplace, a glass of champagne in one hand, holding Tiffany by the waist with the other. Tiffany was wearing a silver dress that was tight enough to cut off circulation. She was laughing too loudly, throwing her head back in a performance of joy that looked exhausted. Beatrice was there, too. She was sitting on my favorite velvet armchair, holding court like the Queen Mother, accepting compliments on a house she had never paid a dime for. "Look at them," Elena murmured. "They are celebrating on your grave." "Let's see if they like the music," I said. On the screen, Marcus tapped a spoon against his glass. The room quieted down. The murmuring ceased. He stepped onto the small riser he had installed in front of the grand projection screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice booming with confidence, "thank you for coming. Tonight is about new beginnings. It is about shedding the old skins of the past and embracing a future that is sleek, modern, and profitable." He paused for applause. Tiffany clapped the loudest, her acrylic nails clicking together like hail on a tin roof. "For years, Vanguard Horizon has been a leader," Marcus continued. "But we have been held back. We have been tethered to outdated ideas, to traditional limitations." He was talking about me. I was the traditional limitation. But tonight, he smiled, I am proud to unveil the new direction of our firm, a direction of bold, uncompromising vision, And to help me lead this charge, I want to introduce the new head of our interior design division, the woman who brings a fresh, youthful energy to our brand, Ms. Tiffany Banks. There was a polite, confused ripple of applause. The investors looked at each other. Tiffany, the girl who was currently drinking a vodka tonic like it was water. But first, Marcus said, gesturing to the screen behind him, let me show you our new logo. That was my cue. I tapped the screen on my tablet. Inside the house, the lights flickered. It was not a dramatic blackout. It was subtle. The warm, golden ambient lighting shifted. I dialed the color temperature down from a cozy 2,700 Kelvin to a sterile, hospital-grade 5,000 Kelvin. The room suddenly felt cold. The guests blinked. The warm glow was gone, replaced by a harsh, interrogation room glare that exposed every wrinkle on Beatrice's face and every layer of foundation on Tiffany's skin. Technical glitch. Marcus laughed nervously. Lighting guys. Can we fix that? He pressed the clicker to reveal his new logo. I intercepted the signal. Instead of his new, Ausschadern graphic, the screen behind him flashed static for a second. Then, an image appeared. It was not a logo. It was a scanned copy of a handwritten napkin. The room went silent. It was the napkin from our first date at a diner in Brooklyn 10 years ago. On it, drawn in blue ballpoint pen, was the very first sketch of the Vanguard Horizon concept. And underneath the sketch, in Marcus's own handwriting, were the words, I would be nothing without you. Jules, you are the brain. I am just the suit. Marcus froze. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. What is that? Tiffany whispered loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Is that a dirty napkin? I apologize. Marcus stammered. Wrong file. Just a moment. He clicked the remote again frantically. I hit the audio button. The sound system, which was playing generic lounge jazz, cut out with a sharp screech of feedback. Then, a new song began to play. It was not subtle. It was our song, the song we had danced to at our wedding, Unforgettable by Nat King Cole. But I had Kevin slow the tempo down by 20% and add a slight reverb, making it sound distorted, haunting, and deeply unsettling. Unforgettable. That's what you are. The voice crooned through the speakers, dragging like a ghost dragging chains. Beatrice dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, the sound echoing in the sudden awkward silence of the room. Make it stop, Marcus hissed at a confused sound technician. Cut the power. But the technician was locked out. I had override control. Then, I did the final thing. I switched the image on the screen again. This time, it was a live feed. It was a camera angle from the security camera inside the garage. The camera was pointed directly at the empty spot where my 1967 Mercedes wagon used to be. Superimposed over the empty parking spot were the words, written in the same font as his presentation, asset sold $400, market value $120,000, federal investigation pending. A gasp went through the room. These were bankers. These were investors. They understood numbers. They understood fraud. They saw the discrepancy immediately. Marcus turned pale. He looked like he was going to vomit. He looked at the screen. Then he looked around the room, his eyes wild. He knew. He knew I wasn't in the hospital sleeping. He knew I was watching. He ran to the power cord of the projector and yanked it out of the wall. The screen went black. The music cut off abruptly, leaving a ringing silence in the room. Prank, Marcus yelled, his voice cracking. We have been hacked. It is a competitor trying to sabotage the launch. Security, clear the room. No. Wait. Do not clear the room. Everyone stay and drink. He was unraveling. He was sweating profusely under the harsh lights I had left on. Tiffany looked terrified. She grabbed his arm. Babe, what is going on? What federal investigation? Shut up. Marcus snapped at her, snapping in front of the city's elite. I watched Beatrice. She was staring at the blank screen, her hand over her mouth. She recognized the napkin. She recognized the car. And for the first time, She looked afraid. In the car. I lowered the tablet. My heart was pounding. But it was a good rhythm. It was the rhythm of a drum beating a march. "Did you see his face?" Elena asked, a savage grin on her face. "I saw it," I said. "He looks like a man who just realized the house is haunted." "What now?" Elena asked. "Do we go in?" "No," I said. "We leave. We let them stew in it. We let the investors whisper. By tomorrow morning. The rumor won't be that I'm crazy. The rumor will be that Marcus is unstable, that he is hiding financial crimes, and that he is being haunted by his own incompetence." I looked out the tinted window at my house one last time. It looked beautiful from the outside, glowing in the night, but inside, it was a rot. And I had just turned on the light so everyone could see the mold. "Drive," I told Elena. As we pulled away, I checked my phone. I had a text from Gavin Thorne. "Just left your husband's party. It was a disaster. He was screaming at the walls. By the way, my lawyers are drafting the indemnification clause for the Solaris project now. Thanks for the tip." I smiled. The pain in my leg was still there, throbbing with every bump in the road. But it felt different now. It was no longer the pain of injury. It was the pain of a weapon being forged. Marcus thought he was the king of the castle. He didn't realize that the walls were listening. The lights were watching, and the architect had just come back to inspect the foundation, and I had found it wanting. "Tomorrow," I said to Elena as we merged onto the highway, "we go to the bank. I want to see the look on the manager's face when the invalid walks in on her own 2 feet. "You are enjoying this," Elena noted. "I am not enjoying it," I corrected her. "I am executing it. There is a difference. Enjoyment is for games. This is demolition." The Velvet Oak was the kind of establishment where silence cost $12 a cup. It had high-backed velvet booths, dark mahogany paneling that absorbed sound, and an unspoken rule that business conducted here was never discussed outside. It was the perfect acoustic environment for a confession. I arrived 15 minutes early. I was wearing a charcoal wool dress that covered my neck and wrists. Modest and severe. My hair was pulled back into a tight chignon. Leaning against the table were my aluminum crutches. They were props now. Theater tools I used to lower the guard of my enemies. I sat in booth 4, crucially, booth 5, directly behind me and separated only by a thin decorative screen of frosted glass and lattice wood, was already occupied. 2 people sat there nursing Earl Grey tea. One was Arthur Pendleton, the chairman of the board of Vanguard Horizon. The other was Linda Way, the head of the ethics committee. They had arrived 20 minutes ago through the back entrance. As arranged by Elena, they could not see me, and I could not see them. But in the hush of the Velvet Oak, they could hear a pin drop. I checked my watch. It was 3:05. Marcus was late. He arrived at 3:10. He looked like a man who was trying to outrun a ghost. His eyes were bloodshot, likely from the disaster at the gala the night before. He wore sunglasses indoors, and his suit, usually impeccable, looked like he had slept in it. He saw me and stopped. His eyes went to the crutches. A flicker of relief passed over his face. He still saw the cripple. He still saw the victim. He slid into the booth opposite me, bringing with him the smell of stale scotch and mints. "You are late," I said. My voice was low, forcing him to lean in. "I had meetings," Marcus snapped, removing his sunglasses and rubbing his temples. "Damage control. Your little stunt with the power outage last night cost us face. Julia, the investors are nervous." "It was a technical glitch. Was it not?" I asked innocently. "That is what you told the press." "Just give me the papers," he said. Ignoring the jab, he pulled a folded document from his inside pocket and slammed it on the mahogany table. "The transfer of the voting shares. The bank rejected the last one because of your shaky handwriting. Sign this one. Cleanly. I need to stabilize the stock price by tomorrow morning." I looked at the document. It was a complete surrender of my 51% controlling interest. "I will sign," I said softly. Marcus exhaled, his shoulders dropping. "Good. Finally, you are being reasonable." "But first," I said, placing my hand over the paper. I need to understand something. Marcus, for my own peace of mind. What? He asked, impatient. Make it quick. The reserve fund, I said. The emergency liquidity fund for the company. I tried to access the balance sheet yesterday to pay for my physical therapy. It is empty. It is not empty, Marcus lied. He did not even blink. It is reallocated. We are investing in new software. $5 million? I asked. That is a lot of software. It is complex. He waved his hand dismissively. You would not understand. You draw pretty pictures. Julia, you do not understand high finance. I understand math, I said, leaning forward slightly. And I understand that $5 million was transferred to a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Obsidian Holdings. I understand that Obsidian Holdings is registered to a PO box that you pay for with your personal credit card. Marcus froze. The waitress arrived to take his order, but he waved her away aggressively. You are spying on me, he hissed. I am asking a question, I said calmly. Did you take the money? Marcus? Keep your voice down, he whispered, glancing around. The cafe was empty except for an elderly couple by the window and, unbeknownst to him, the two most powerful people in our company sitting 6 inches behind his head. Why did you take it? I pressed. That money was for the employee pension guarantee. It was for the structural insurance on the new projects. I did not take it, he said, his voice rising in agitation. I borrowed it. I am the CEO. I can move capital wherever I want. It is not your capital, Marcus. It belongs to the shareholders. It belongs to the company. I am the company. The words hung in the air. He had said it. He had said the quiet part out loud. You are the company, I repeated, making sure the words carried over the partition. Yes. Marcus leaned across the table. His face twisted with a mixture of arrogance and desperation. Who do you think sells the projects? Julia, you are a ghost. You sit in your office and sketch lines on paper. I am the one out there shaking hands. I am the one closing deals. I earned that money. That $5 million is mine. I built this empire while you played artist. So, you admit you transferred the funds to your personal control because you believe you are entitled to it. I admit that I am doing what is necessary to save this business from your lack of vision, he spat. You are just an employee, Julia, a glorified draftsman with a last name I gave you. The only reason you had that office is because I let you play pretend. But now the adults are talking, so sign the paper. I saw the shadow of Arthur Pendleton behind the frosted glass shift. He had heard enough. He had heard the CEO confess to embezzlement and declare himself the owner of assets he did not possess. But I was not done. I had dismantled his professional integrity. Now, I was going to dismantle his heart. You are right, I said, pulling my hand back. You are the businessman. I am just the wife. I reached into my purse. And as a wife, I suppose I should be concerned about Tiffany. Marcus rolled his eyes. Oh God. Here we go. Are we really doing the jealous ex routine? Yes, I am with Tiffany. Yes, she is young. Yes, she is beautiful. Get over it. I am not jealous, Marcus, I said. I am worried because you seem to think Tiffany is your future queen. She is, he said defiantly. She understands me. She supports me. She is not like you, judging me every second of the day. I pulled out a stack of high-resolution photographs. I slid them across the polished wood table, face up. Then why is she spending her weekends with Julian Vance? Marcus looked down. The photos were brutal in their clarity. They were taken with a telephoto lens, but the faces were unmistakable. Picture 1, Tiffany sitting at an outdoor bistro. Picture 2. Julian Vance, the CEO of Vance Architecture, our biggest and most ruthless competitor, reaching across the table. Picture 3, Julian handing Tiffany a thick white envelope. Picture 4, Tiffany kissing Julian Vance on the cheek, a look of familiarity in her eyes that was unmistakable. Marcus stared at the photos. His face went pale, then red. "This is fake," he said, his voice shaking. "You photoshopped this. Look at the date stamp." "Marcus," I said. "3 days ago, while you were at the bank trying to freeze my assets, your queen was having lunch with the enemy." "She knows him," Marcus stammered. They are friends. She used to model for his brand." "Is that why she is handing him a USB drive in this one?" I asked, sliding the final photo across. It showed Tiffany passing a small, silver thumb drive to Julian Vance. "What is that?" Marcus whispered. "That," I said, "is the backup drive of your laptop, the one you keep in your safe. The one with the bidding data for the stadium project, the one with the password list for the Cayman accounts." Marcus looked up at me. The arrogance was gone. In its place was the hollow look of a man who realizes he has been sleeping with a viper. "She is a spy, Marcus," I said quietly. "She did not target you because you are charming. She targeted you because Julian Vance paid her $50,000 to infiltrate Vanguard Horizon. You are not her boyfriend. You are her assignment." "No!" Marcus shook his head violently. He grabbed the photos and ripped them in half. The sound of tearing paper was loud in the quiet cafe. "You are lying. She loves me. She told me I'm the only one who understands her." "She is playing you," I said. "Just like you tried to play me. The difference is, I am smart enough to see the strings. You are so blinded by your own reflection, you did not notice she was robbing you blind while she was in your bed." "Shut up," Marcus hissed. He slammed his fist on the table. "You are just trying to get inside my head. It won't work. Tiffany is loyal. She is going to be my wife." "She is going to be Julian Vance's bonus check," I corrected him. "And when the board finds out that the CEO gave a corporate spy access to the main servers, well, that is not just incompetence, that is negligence." "The board won't know," Marcus said, his eyes darting around the room. "Because you are going to sign this paper, and I am going to fix everything. I will talk to Tiffany. I will explain it." "You cannot fix this," I said. "Sign the paper," he growled. Reaching out to grab my wrist, I pulled my hand back sharply. "No," I said. Marcus blinked. "What?" I said no. I placed my hands on the table. I took a deep breath. The pain in my leg was a dull roar, a constant companion that reminded me of what he had done. But the adrenaline was stronger. I pushed myself up. Marcus watched me, expecting me to reach for the crutches. He expected me to struggle, to wince, to need the aluminum supports to even stand. I did not touch them. I planted my feet on the floor. I engaged my core. I stood up straight, my spine rigid, my chin high. I stood there, unsupported. Marcus's jaw dropped. He looked at the crutches leaning against the booth, then at me. "You," he stammered. "You are standing." "I am," I said. "But the doctor said what you paid him to say," I said. "But I told you, Marcus, I am an architect. I know how to rebuild." I looked down at him. He seemed so small sitting there, surrounded by torn photos and his own lies. "You wanted a perfect wife," I said, my voice cold and clear. "You wanted someone who could stand on her own. Well, here she is." I stepped out of the booth. My right leg was stiff. Every step sent a jolt of fire up my hip. But I did not limp. I walked with a deliberation that masked the agony. I walked with the rhythm of a marching army. "Julia." Marcus scrambled to get up. "Where are you going? You forgot your crutches." I stopped and looked back at him. I looked at the aluminum sticks leaning against the velvet seat. "I do not need them," I said. "Just like I do not need you." "You can't just walk away," Marcus yelled, forgetting where he was. "We have a deal. I have the power." I smiled. It was the smile of the executioner who has just pulled the lever. "You have nothing, Marcus," I said. "You have a mistress who works for your enemy. You have a bank account that is about to be frozen. And you have an audience." I gestured vaguely toward the booth behind him. Marcus turned around. At that moment, Arthur Pendleton and Linda Way stood up. They looked over the partition. Their faces were grim. Arthur looked at Marcus with a disappointment that was worse than anger. "Marcus," Arthur said, his voice heavy. "We need to talk. Now." Marcus turned pale. All the blood drained from his face. He looked from Arthur to me, putting the pieces together too late. "Julia," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You set me up." "No," I said, turning my back on him. "I just turned on the lights." I walked to the door. I did not look back. I heard Marcus stammering, trying to explain, trying to spin his web of lies to the two people who held his fate in their hands. "Arthur, wait. It is not what it sounds like. She is crazy. She is manipulating you." The only thing I hear, Marcus, Arthur's voice carried across the room, is a confession. I pushed open the heavy oak door of the cafe and stepped out onto the street. The afternoon sun hit my face. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. I had left the crutches behind. My leg was screaming, demanding rest, demanding relief, but I forced myself to walk to the waiting car where Elena was watching with a stunned expression. "You left them," Elena said as I opened the door. "I did," I said, sliding into the seat and finally allowing myself to wince. "Can you walk?" "I can walk enough," I said, looking back at the cafe window where I could see Marcus standing up, arguing desperately with the board members. "I can walk away from him." "Did he confess?" "He confessed to everything," I said, rubbing my thigh. "Embezzlement, incompetence, ego, and the board heard every word. And the girl?" "He knows," I said. "He knows he is sleeping with the enemy. I broke his heart and his bank account in the same hour." Elena started the engine. "You are terrifying, Julia." "I am just getting started," I replied. "Now, take me to the notary. I have one more document to sign, the one that officially fires him." As the car pulled away, I watched the velvet oak disappear in the rearview mirror. I had walked in there a cripple in his eyes. I had walked out a giant. And he was left in the booth, trapped between the walls of his own making, with no one to blame but himself. The law is a machine. It does not care about feelings. It does not care about tears. It cares about process, precedent, and paper. And Marcus was about to get caught in the gears. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Elena Rossi walked into the clerk's office at the Superior Court. She did not walk with haste. She walked with the terrifying precision of a woman who had already written the verdict. She filed an ex parte application for emergency asset freeze and a temporary restraining order against dissipation of marital assets. The filing fee was $435. The cost to Marcus would be incalculable. "We are alleging immediate and irreparable harm," Elena told the judge an hour later in chambers. "The respondent, Mr. Sterling, has transferred significant liquid capital, specifically $5 million, to offshore entities within 48 hours of serving divorce papers to my client in an intensive care unit." The judge, a stern woman who had likely seen 1,000 divorces but few this brazen, looked at the evidence. She looked at the timestamp on the wire transfer. She looked at the medical report detailing my condition at the time. "Granted," the judge said. "Freeze it all." By 10 o'clock, the digital guillotine fell. I was sitting in Elena's home office, surrounded by monitors, when the first notification came through. Alert Vanguard Horizon Primary Operating Account. Status frozen. Alert Marcus Sterling Personal Checking. Status frozen. Alert Joint Marital Investment Portfolio. Status frozen. It was a cascade of red text. It was beautiful. Marcus, however, was unaware. He was currently at a luxury boutique in the downtown fashion district with Tiffany. According to the credit card tracking software I still had access to because, as a joint account holder, I could see real-time attempted authorizations he was trying to buy her a handbag. Attempted charge, $12,500. Merchant Hermes. I watched the screen. Status declined. Reason code 05, do not honor. I could almost see the scene. Marcus, confident and arrogant, handing over the black card, the sales associate running it, the awkward pause, the second attempt, the polite but firm refusal, the whispers of the other customers, Tiffany's embarrassment turning into irritation. Then, he tried another card, the Platinum Amex. Status declined. Then the debit card. Status declined. I took a sip of my coffee. He is drowning in shallow water, I murmured, but the real trap was not the freeze itself. It was the document he had forced me to sign in the ICU, the one he thought was his golden ticket. Elena had explained it to the judge brilliantly. Your Honor, she had argued, Mr. Sterling is relying on a transfer of asset authority document signed by my client on January 24th. However, he failed to read the fine print on the verso side of the document, specifically Clause 4B. Clause 4B was a masterpiece of legal drafting. I had inserted it myself years ago when I first created the template for executive transfers, ostensibly to protect the company from corporate espionage. It read, in size 6 font, any transfer of authority executed while a signatory is under medical care or duress is provisional for 30 days and requires third-party validation for any transaction exceeding $10,000. By rushing to move the $5 million without a third-party validator, Marcus had not just violated a court order, he had violated the very contract he forced me to sign. He had legally entrapped himself. The fallout was immediate and violent. At noon, my phone rang. It was the concierge of my apartment building, or rather, the building where Elena lived and where I was hiding. Ms. Westfall, the concierge said, his voice tense. There is a Mr. Sterling here. He is agitated. He is demanding to see you. He is shouting. Do not let him up, I said calmly. And call the police. I switched to the security feed of the lobby. Marcus was there. He looked unhinged. His tie was loose, his hair was disheveled, and he was pounding on the glass of the reception desk. She is in there, he screamed at the terrified security guard. I know she is in there. Tell her to unblock my cards. Tell her she can't do this to me. I am the CEO. He was attracting a crowd. Residents were stopping to watch. People were filming with their phones. This is harassment, Elena said, standing behind me. He is violating your privacy and threatening your safety. Let him scream, I said. Every word is evidence. 2 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Marcus tried to argue with them. He pointed at the ceiling, yelling about theft and conspiracy. When an officer tried to calm him down, Marcus shoved his hand away. That was a mistake. I watched as they spun him around and slammed him against the reception desk. They cuffed him. It wasn't an arrest for fraud, not yet, but for disorderly conduct and resisting an officer, as they dragged him out to the squad car. He looked up at the security camera. For a second, our eyes met through the lens. He looked terrified. He looked like a man who had woken up in a nightmare he couldn't control. He will be out in a few hours, Elena noted. He will make bail. Yes, I agreed. But by the time he gets out, the headline will be ready. I had not been idle while recovering. I had reached out to an old contact, an investigative journalist named Sarah, who specialized in corporate scandals. I gave her everything: the hospital records, the timeline of the transfers, the photos of Tiffany with Julian Vance. At 2:00, the story broke. The Austin Business Journal ran the exclusive online. The headline was stark: Vanguard Horizon CEO, under investigation, financial irregularities and allegations of abandonment surrounding wife's accident. It was a hit piece, but it was factual. It detailed the $5 million transfer. It mentioned the police incident in the lobby. It quoted anonymous sources close to the board expressing loss of confidence. The phone at Vanguard Horizon began to ring off the hook. I knew because I still had access to the internal communication logs. Caller pension fund manager. Subject urgent. Solvency check. Caller city council. Subject review of public contracts. Caller major investor group A. Subject immediate withdrawal of IPO commitment. The investors were not just nervous, they were fleeing. The IPO. Marcus's dream, the thing he had sacrificed his marriage and his morality for, was dead in the water, but the most satisfying notification came from a personal source. My spyware on Marcus's phone, which I legally had access to as it was a company device registered in my name, showed a flurry of text messages. From Tiffany, babe. My card got declined at lunch. What is going on, Tiffany? I saw the news. Are you seriously under investigation, Tiffany? Julian says I shouldn't be seen with you right now. It is bad for my brand. Tiffany. I am going to stay at my sister's for a while. Don't come over. She was gone. The moment the money stopped flowing, the love stopped flowing, it was a transactional relationship, and the transaction had just bounced. Marcus was released from custody at 5 o'clock. He went straight to the office, only to find his keycard deactivated. He went home to the empty mansion, only to find the power cut off because the utility bill autopay had failed on the frozen card. And then, he found the envelope I had couriered to him. Inside was a single document. It was a forensic analysis of the divorce papers he had filed. I had highlighted one specific section, the signature block. In his haste and arrogance, Marcus had not noticed that when I signed Julia Westfall Sterling, I had deliberately altered the loop of the S and the angle of the J. To the naked eye, it looked like my signature. But to the bank's automated verification system, the system that processed high-value transactions, it was a mismatch. The letter accompanying the analysis was brief. Dear Marcus, the signature on the divorce petition does not match the specimen on file with our financial institutions. Therefore, the bank has flagged the document as potentially fraudulent and invalid for authorization purposes. However, the signature is valid enough to prove your intent to divorce me while I was incapacitated. It is valid enough to be entered into evidence in family court as proof of duress. So, here is your situation. You cannot use the paper to get the money because the bank rejects it, but I can use the paper to destroy you in court because you filed it. You are trapped in a paradox of your own making. You have a document that is worthless to you, but lethal to you. Welcome to the endgame. Julia. I imagined him sitting in the dark living room, reading that letter by the light of his dying phone battery. I imagined the silence of the big, empty house pressing in on him. He had tried to use the law as a weapon against me. He didn't realize that I was the one who wrote the instruction manual. It is done, I said to Elena. He is isolated. He is broke. He is single. And he is publicly disgraced. Not quite done, Elena said, looking at a new email. The board just called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They want you there. Me. Yes, they want the founder back. They want to know if you can save the ship. I looked down at my leg. It throbbed, a constant reminder of the price I had paid. Tell them I will be there, I said. And tell them to have security ready to escort Mr. Sterling out of the building. I do not want him to miss his own firing. The legal net had tightened until it was a noose, and tomorrow, I was going to kick the chair out from under him, but I wouldn't do it with anger. I wouldn't do it with shouting. I would do it with the same cold, calculated precision he had shown me in the ICU, because in America, you don't kill a man with a gun, you kill him with a subpoena. And I had a briefcase full of them. The storm outside the glass walls of the Vanguard Horizon skyscraper was violent. Rain lashed against the 92nd floor windows, blurring the lights of the city below into smears of neon and gray. It was 2 a.m. The office was a tomb of silence, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the HVAC system and the occasional crack of thunder. I sat in the dark. I was sitting in the executive chair, my chair behind the desk made of reclaimed obsidian oak that I had designed myself. I was not alone. To my right, sitting on the leather sofa in the shadows, was Elena. Beside her stood 2 officers from the Economic Crimes Unit, their badges catching the faint light from the hallway. We were statues. We were waiting for a ghost, or rather, a thief. The security alert had come through 20 minutes ago. The perimeter alarm on the private elevator had been bypassed using an override code. It was an old code, one that belonged to the CEO. Marcus thought he was being clever. He thought he was sneaking into his own kingdom to salvage the crown jewels before the castle fell. He did not know that I had been watching his dot move on the security grid since he parked his rental car in the loading bay. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I heard his footsteps. They were heavy, hurried, and clumsy. He was not walking with the confident stride of a man who owned the place. He was scurrying. He was breathing hard. I could hear the rustle of a duffel bag dragging against the carpet. Marcus came into view. He was a wreck. He was wearing a black hoodie pulled up over his head, jeans that looked dirty, and sneakers. He went straight to the wall safe hidden behind the portrait of the company founders. He did not even look at the desk. He was focused entirely on the safe. He punched in the code, 1988, his birth year. The ego of this man was a fatal flaw that never ceased to amaze me. The light on the safe turned red. "Damn it," he hissed. He punched it again, 1988, red. "Come on," he shouted, kicking the wall. "Open, you piece of junk." He tried a third time. This time, the keypad locked out, emitting a long, piercing tone. "Having trouble with the combination. Marcus?" I asked. My voice cut through the room like a cold draft. Marcus spun around, dropping the duffel bag. He squinted into the darkness of the office. "Who is there?" he stammered. "Security. I am the CEO. I have authorization." I reached out and pressed the button on the desk console. The overhead lights slammed on. They were bright, unforgiving LED strips that flooded the room with clinical clarity. Marcus threw his hands up to shield his eyes. When his vision cleared, he saw us. He saw me, sitting calm and composed in a white silk suit, my hands folded on the desk. He saw Elena, looking at him with the disdain one reserves for a cockroach. And he saw the two police officers, their hands resting near their belts, their faces impassive. "Julia," Marcus breathed. He lowered his hands. He looked wild. His eyes were bloodshot, his face covered in stubble. He looked like a man who had not slept in 48 hours. "What is this, an ambush?" "It is a board meeting," I said calmly. Although I admit, the dress code is a bit casual. "You locked me out," he accused, stepping forward. "You changed the codes. That is illegal. I am still the CEO until the shareholders vote otherwise." "Actually," Elena spoke up, her voice dry and sharp, "you are trespassing, and judging by the bag," she gestured to the duffel on the floor, "I would say you are attempting corporate espionage and theft of proprietary materials." Marcus laughed. It was a jagged, hysterical sound. "Theft, I built this. These are my designs. I came to get what is mine before you steal it all with your lawyers." "Your designs." I raised an eyebrow. "Marcus, you cannot even draw a straight line without a ruler. You came for the original blueprints of the Solaris project and the hard drives containing the offshore account ledgers. You came to destroy the evidence." He narrowed his eyes. "You have no proof." "We have video of you entering the building," one of the officers said. "We have video of you attempting to access a secured safe, and we have the witness testimony regarding the $5 million you wired to the Cayman Islands." "That was a loan," Marcus screamed. "I told you it was a bridge loan." "Save it for the judge," I said. "But before they take you away, Marcus, I want you to understand exactly why you lost. I want you to know that it was not bad luck. It was not a glitch. It was me." I picked up a piece of paper from the desk. It was the original divorce petition he had thrown at me in the ICU, the one with the coffee stain and the crinkled edges. "Do you recognize this?" I asked. "My divorce papers," he sneered. "So what? You signed them. You agreed to give me control." "I signed them," I corrected, "but you never looked at the signature." I slid the paper across the obsidian desk. It stopped right at the edge, inches from his waist. "Look at it," I commanded. Marcus hesitated, then snatched the paper. He stared at the bottom of the page. "Julia Westfall Sterling," he read. So you used your maiden name. Big deal. It is still you. Look closer, I said. At the numbers after the name. He squinted. 1142. I thought that was the date. November 4th. It was January. Marcus, I said softly. 1142 is not a date. It is my employee identification number from when I first founded the firm. He looked up, confused. So, you really never read the company bylaws, did you? I asked, shaking my head. Clause 72, Section 5, the Founders Protection Protocol. It states that if a founding partner signs any document transferring executive authority or assets while under documented medical distress, and if that signature is accompanied by their employee identification number, the document is not an authorization of transfer. I leaned forward. It is an automatic trigger for the poison pill defense. Marcus went pale. What does that mean? It means, Elena explained with relish, that the moment you filed that document with the court, the system recognized the code. It automatically transferred all of Julia's voting shares into a protected copyright protection trust. It locked the company assets, and most importantly, it triggered the immediate removal of any executive who coerced the signature, stripping them of all rank, salary, and access. Marcus dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor like a dying bird. You trapped me, he whispered. In the ICU, you were half dead. I was hurt, I said. I was not stupid. You thought you were forcing me to surrender. In reality, you were hand-delivering your own resignation letter to the court. This is entrapment, Marcus yelled. I will sue. I will deny everything. It is your word against mine. I will tell them you are crazy. I will tell them you hallucinated the coercion. It might have been my word against yours, I agreed. If you had any credibility left, but sadly, your character witness just arrived. I nodded to the door behind him. Marcus turned around. Tiffany walked in. She looked different. Gone was the silver dress and the arrogant swagger. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No makeup, and she looked terrified. She was holding her phone in both hands like it was a holy relic. Tiffany, Marcus asked, his voice breaking. Babe, what are you doing here? Tell them I am innocent. Tiffany did not look at him. She looked at the police officer and handed him the phone. It is all there, she said, her voice trembling. The text messages where he told me to hide the cash, the emails to the offshore bank, and the recording. Recording, Marcus whispered. The one from the car, Tiffany said, finally looking at him. Her eyes were cold. When you told me you were going to sell the company for parts and leave Julia with the debt, you told me to record it so we could laugh about it later. She stepped back, moving closer to the police officer for protection. I am not going to jail for you. Marcus, she said, I made a deal. Marcus looked at her. The betrayal hit him harder than the financial ruin. He had sold his marriage for this woman, and she had sold him for immunity. You little snake, Marcus growled. He looked around the room. He saw the police blocking the door. He saw Elena smiling. He saw me, sitting in the chair he coveted, untouchable. The walls were closing in. The reality of his life, the prison cell, the poverty, the humiliation crashed down on him, and he snapped. No, he screamed. I am not losing to you. I am Marcus Sterling. He lunged. He did not run for the door. He ran for me. He scrambled over the desk, his face twisted into a mask of pure, animalistic rage. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to silence the voice that had outsmarted him. Julia, Elena screamed. The police officers moved, but they were too far away. Marcus was fast. He reached across the desk, his hands clawing for my throat. I did not scream. I did not cower. I stood up. I stood up on my own two legs. Ignoring the flash of pain in my right hip, I grabbed the heavy, solid oak cane that was leaning against the chair, my new walking aid. Elegant and formidable. As Marcus came over the desk, I swung. I did not swing to kill. I swung to stop. The cane connected with his outstretched arm with a sickening crack. Back, I commanded. My voice was not the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a CEO. It was the voice of a woman who had pulled herself out of a wreck. Marcus howled in pain and fell back onto the carpet, clutching his arm. "Get off her!" the officer shouted, tackling him. They pinned him to the ground, knees in his back, handcuffs clicking shut before he could take another breath. Marcus struggled, his face pressed against the floor of the office he used to rule. He looked up at me. I was standing over him, leaning on my cane, looking down from the height of my victory. "Why," he choked out, tears mixing with the dust on his face. "Why did you do this? We were partners. Why are you so cruel?" The room went silent. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, the man who had thrown me away like garbage when I broke. "Cruel?" I asked softly. I walked around the desk. The sound of my cane tapping on the floor was steady. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped right in front of his face. "Cruel is telling your wife she is a burden while she lies in a hospital bed," I said. "Cruel is stealing her legacy to buy a ring for your mistress. Cruel is trying to make her believe she is insane so you can rob her." I leaned down. "This is not cruelty, Marcus," I whispered. "This is accounting. You took everything from me. I am simply balancing the books." "You ruined me," he sobbed. "No," I said, straightening up. "You ruined yourself. I just signed the paperwork." I nodded to the officers. "Get him out of my building." They hauled him up. He was weeping now, a broken, sobbing mess. He looked at Tiffany, but she turned her face away. He looked at Elena, but she was busy checking her nails. He looked at me, begging for 1 ounce of the mercy he had never shown me. I gave him nothing. They dragged him out. The elevator doors opened, and they pushed him inside. The last thing I saw was his face as the doors closed, a mask of absolute despair. When he was gone, the silence returned. But it was different now. It was clean. Tiffany looked at me nervously. "Can I go now?" The officer said I could go. "Go," I said, not even looking at her. "And Tiffany?" She paused at the door. "Yeah." "Leave the ring," I said. "He bought it with my money." She hesitated, then slid the diamond ring off her finger and placed it on the desk. She ran out of the room as if the floor were on fire. Elena walked over to the sideboard and poured 2 glasses of water. She handed one to me. Her hand was shaking slightly. "That was close," she said. "He could have hurt you." "He already hurt me," I said, taking the glass. "He can't hurt me anymore." I walked to the window. The rain was still falling, but the thunder had stopped. I looked down at the street below. I saw the flashing lights of the police car. I saw a figure being shoved into the back seat. I watched as the car pulled away, disappearing into the traffic of the city. I waited for the joy. I waited for the rush of triumph. The feeling of elation that comes when you win the game. It did not come. Instead, I felt a heavy, profound exhaustion. It was the feeling of setting down a weight you have carried for too long. It was the feeling of waking up from a surgery and knowing the tumor is gone. It hurts. You are scarred, and the recovery will be long. But the thing that was killing you is out. "It is over," Elena said softly, standing beside me. "Yes," I said. "The marriage is over. The fight is over." I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked different. The soft lines of the wife were gone. The eyes staring back at me were harder, wiser, and infinitely sadder, but they were clear. "Are you happy?" Elena asked. I took a sip of the water. It tasted like rain. "No," I said truthfully. "I am not happy. Happiness is for people who haven't had to destroy the person they love to survive." I turned away from the window and looked at my office. It was messy. The safe was open. The chair was askew, but it was mine. "I am not happy," I repeated, gripping my cane. "But I am free." And in the end, freedom was the only currency that mattered. Marcus had wanted a fortune. I just wanted my life back. And as I stood there in the quiet aftermath of the storm, I knew I had finally paid the ransom. 3 months is a strange amount of time. It is long enough for a broken bone to knit itself back together. But it is short enough that the phantom pain still wakes you up in the middle of the night. The courtroom was quiet. It was not the dramatic silence of the movies, where the audience gasps and the music swells. It was the dry bureaucratic silence of a room where dreams go to die and paperwork is born. I sat in the front row, my hands resting on the handle of my cane. I was wearing red. Not the modest gray or black I had worn during the deposition, but a deep, crimson-red suit that looked like fresh blood on snow. Judge Harrison adjusted his glasses and looked down at the man standing at the defense table. Marcus looked different. The arrogance that had defined his silhouette for 10 years had evaporated, leaving behind a man who looked shrunken in his own suit. His hair was thinning. His skin had the grayish pallor of stress and cheap takeout. He did not look at me. He looked at his shoes. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said. His voice was bored. "In the matter of the People versus Marcus Sterling regarding the charges of wire fraud and embezzlement, and in the civil matter of the dissolution of marriage, this court has reached a verdict." I held my breath, not out of fear, but out of anticipation. "On the criminal charges, given your plea agreement and the return of the stolen funds, you are sentenced to 3 years of probation. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $250,000. Furthermore, you are hereby barred from holding any executive officer position in any publicly traded architecture or engineering firm for a period of 5 years. A 5-year ban. In our industry, 5 years is a lifetime. By the time he was allowed back in, the technology would have outpaced him, the contacts would have forgotten him, and his name would be nothing more than a cautionary tale taught in ethics classes." The judge banged the gavel. It made a sharp, wooden sound, thud, and just like that, the marriage that had defined my 30s was over. Marcus turned around then. He looked at me. I think he expected to see triumph on my face. He expected to see a smirk. But I gave him nothing. My face was a blank canvas. I watched him as if he were a building I had decided not to buy. He opened his mouth to say something, perhaps a final insult, perhaps a plea, but his lawyer pulled him away. I watched him walk out of the courtroom. He walked with a slump, his shoulders rounded, carrying the invisible weight of his own ego. I stood up. My right leg was stiff. I shifted my weight, felt the familiar ache in my hip, and then I took a step. It was imperfect. It was a limp, but it was my limp. I walked out of that courthouse into the bright afternoon sun of Austin, and for the first time in months, the air did not taste like disinfectant. It tasted like ozone and gasoline and freedom. The fallout was swift and absolute. Justice in the real world is not always about jail cells. Sometimes, justice is watching someone have to live the life they thought they were too good for. Marcus did not go to prison, but he went somewhere worse for a man like him. He went to irrelevance. I heard through the grapevine, because in this city, the grapevine is faster than fiber optics, that he had moved out of the downtown penthouse. He could no longer afford the rent without the company card. He was living in a studio apartment in a complex near the airport, the kind of place where the walls are thin and the neighbors argue at 3 a.m. He tried to get hired at the big firms. They all politely declined. The ban only stopped him from being an executive, but his reputation stopped him from being anything else. Eventually, he took a job as a project manager for a small residential construction company that specialized in drywall installation. The man who wanted to build skyscrapers was now supervising the installation of sheetrock in suburban basements. I imagined him standing on those dusty job sites, wearing a yellow safety vest, listening to the drone of power drills, remembering the days when he drank vintage scotch in a corner office. That memory would be his prison. Every day would be a reminder of how high he had been and how far he had fallen. His family fared no better. Beatrice Sterling, the woman who had called me a burden, found that society is a fickle friend when the news of the embezzlement broke. The invitations to the charity galas stopped coming. The whispers at the country club became too loud to ignore. She tried to hold her head high, but shame has a way of seeping into the bones. She listed the family estate 2 weeks after the trial. It sold for under market value because she was desperate to leave. She moved back to her hometown in Ohio, a small farming community she had spent 40 years pretending she wasn't from. I hoped the quiet would do her good. I hoped that in the silence of the countryside, she would finally learn that a son's character is more important than his bank account. But I doubted it. And Tiffany, the love of his life, the queen of his castle. She lasted exactly 4 days after his credit cards were frozen. As soon as it became clear that Marcus was not a misunderstood genius, but a broke criminal, she vanished. I saw her photo on Instagram a month later. She was on a yacht in the Mediterranean, hanging on the arm of a 60-year-old oil tycoon. She looked happy. She looked expensive. She was a survivor in her own way, a parasite that jumps from host to host. I did not hate her. You do not hate a mosquito for biting you. You just swat it and close the window. As for me, I had work to do. I returned to the office on a Monday. The sign in the lobby still said Vanguard Horizon, but the maintenance crew was already on ladders, taking it down. I walked into the boardroom. The entire staff was there. They looked nervous. They had seen the war, and they were unsure if the new queen would be a tyrant. I stood at the head of the table. I leaned my cane against the obsidian desk. Vanguard Horizon is dead, I said. My voice was calm. That company was built on a partnership that was a lie. We are not going to be the Vanguard anymore. We are not just going to look forward. I pressed a button on the remote. The screen behind me lit up. A new logo appeared. It was sharp, angular, and fierce. It was a stylized bird rising from a geometric fire. We are Phoenix Designs, I announced, because we burned down, and now we rise. The room was silent for a second, and then, slowly, the applause started. It wasn't the polite applause of fear. It was genuine. I saw David, my lead engineer, smiling. I saw Elena in the back, nodding. We went to work. The next few months were the hardest of my professional life. We had to rebuild client trust. We had to audit every project Marcus had touched. We had to work 18-hour days. But the atmosphere was different. The fear was gone. The toxicity was gone. And I was different. I did not hide my injury. I did not wear long skirts to cover the scar that ran down my leg like a jagged zipper. I wore it. When I walked through the office, the rhythmic tap of my cane was a signal that the boss was coming. It became a symbol of resilience. Clients would look at my leg, then look at my face, and they would see that the two were connected. The woman who could survive that crash could certainly handle their 50-story tower. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I found myself in a small coffee shop near the old part of the city. It was not the Velvet Oak. It was a quiet place with mismatched furniture and the smell of roasted beans. I sat by the window. I ordered a double espresso. I remembered the day at the cafe with Marcus, the day I had exposed him. I remembered how he used to criticize my coffee habits, how he used to control even the smallest details of what I consumed. You are too intense. Julia, drink herbal tea. Be softer. I took a sip of the espresso. It was hot, bitter, and strong. It tasted perfect. I looked out at the street. People were rushing by, huddled under umbrellas. They were living their lives, fighting their battles. I felt a profound sense of peace. I was alone at the table. There was no husband to impress. There was no mother-in-law to appease. There was just me, the coffee, and the rain. I realized then that I had forgiven. I had not forgiven Marcus. I would never forgive him for the cruelty in the ICU. Some things are unforgivable because they reveal a rot in the soul that cannot be scrubbed away. But I had forgiven myself. I forgave the Julia who had been blind. I forgave the woman who had worked herself to the bone to buy affection. I forgave the wife who had signed her name on everything because she thought partnership meant sharing the load, even when the load was crushing her. I forgave her because she didn't know better. She thought love was a transaction. She thought if she paid enough, she would be safe. Now I knew better. My phone buzzed on the table. It vibrated against the wood. A harsh intrusion into my peace. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe a need for finality, made me slide it to answer. "Hello," I said. There was a heavy silence on the other end. Then, a breath, a ragged, wet breath. "Jules?" The voice was slurred. It was thick with alcohol and self-pity. "It is me," Marcus said. I just wanted to hear your voice." I said nothing. I looked at the rain sliding down the glass. "I am at a bar," he rambled. "Down on 6th. They have this terrible scotch. Tastes like paint thinner. Remember the Macallan? Remember the bottle we had?" "I remember," I said softly. "I made a mistake. Jules," he sobbed. It was a pathetic sound. "I messed up. She was nothing. Tiffany was nothing. You were the one. You were always the one. Is there any way we can just talk? Maybe coffee I can change. I can come back to the firm. I will start at the bottom. Please." I listened to him beg. I listened to the man who had thrown divorce papers at a cripple now pleading for a crumb of the life he had destroyed. A part of me, the old part, felt a twinge of sadness. It is sad to watch a building collapse, but the architect in me looked at the rubble and knew it could not be saved. The foundation was sand. "Marcus," I said. Yeah, Jules." He sounded hopeful. "Do not call this number again." "Wait, Jules, please." I pulled the phone away from my ear. I pressed the red button. The call ended. Then, I went into the settings. I found the number. I pressed block caller. I put the phone down. I took another sip of my espresso. I looked across the street, through the rain. I could see the steel skeleton of a new skyscraper rising above the city skyline. It was the Phoenix Tower. My new project. It was going to be the tallest building in the state. It was beautiful, strong, and designed to withstand hurricanes. I realized that the greatest project of my life was not that building. It was not Vanguard Horizon. It was not the millions of dollars or the awards. The greatest project was the woman sitting in this chair. I had been demolished. I had been stripped down to the studs. My walls had been breached, my roof torn off, but the foundation, the core of who I was, had held. And on that foundation, I had built something new, something different. I was no longer the perfect wife. I was no longer the naive partner. I was a fortress. I finished my coffee. I took a napkin and wiped my mouth. I looked at the white paper. There was a perfect imprint of my lips in dark red lipstick. It looked like a seal. It looked like a signature. I left the napkin on the table. I grabbed my cane. I stood up. The pain was there, a dull companion in my hip, but I welcomed it. It was the friction that proved I was moving. I walked to the door of the coffee shop. I pushed it open and stepped out into the rain. I did not open an umbrella. I let the water hit my face. I walked into the crowd, my cane tapping a rhythm on the wet pavement, a steady beat of, "I am here, I am here, I am here." I merged into the flow of people, a woman in a red suit walking with a limp and a smile, leaving the ruins behind, walking toward the skyline I had designed, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't building for anyone else. I was just walking home. Thank you so much for listening to this story until the very end. If this journey of justice and rebuilding resonated with you, I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please comment your city or country down below, so we can see how far our community of survivors extends. If you believe that resilience is the best revenge, please subscribe to the channel Scarlet Revenge Stories. Hit the like button and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Together, we rise.